How sweet sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we no less haste to sing God's praise than when we first begun. If the skies above you are gray, you are feeling so blue. If your cares and burdens seem gray all the whole day through, there's a silver lining that shines in the heavenly land. Look by faith and see, my friend, trust in His promises grant. Sing and be happy, press on to the goal. Trust in Him who leads you to your soul. Let the one away be faithful, look to choose and pray. Lift your voice and raise in song. Sing, be happy today. Often we are troubled and tired, sick with sorrow and pain. There are others living in sin and blessed with earthly gain. Take new courage, we cannot tell what the morrow may bring. When the dark clouds vanish away, then your heart truly can sing. Sing and be happy, press along to the goal. Trust in Him who leads you, He will keep your soul. Let the one away be faithful, look to choose Him and pray. Lift your voice and raise in a song. Sing, be happy today. Oft we fail to see the rainbow up in heaven's fair sky, when it seems the fortunes of earth frown and pass us by. There are things we know they are worth more than silver and
Good evening. Rick, if you would, for when we get done, maybe pick out a song or two. Okay. How is everybody? May get some rain. That'd be good. Although it may not be too fun of a ride all the way down to Texas, and, or a game to play if it. It's a turf field that won't bother you. Although some of it's going to be thunderstorms, so who knows? Yeah, yeah, but this is 5 hours in good weather, so hopefully it don't do what the forecast is, because that may take them a little longer to get there. And big things at night, they're going to probably get back after 3. So yeah, keep all them in your prayers, all the ones that are going. I don't know how they decided if the cheerleaders are going yet. No decision yet. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been so dry, and hopefully we'll get some rain. Hate that. Also, the band has a big marching invitational that they always participate in at Charleston. Only good news about it is Charleston has an indoor practice facility, and so if it's raining Saturday, they will move indoors. Bad news about that, they do have some seating, but my guess is it's very limited. And the Charleston it's usually a big, huge crowd, so my guess is if it is raining, the bands won't actually be able to watch, which is kind of the neat thing about that one, because all the bands stay and watch through it. But anyway, that's only down the road in Charleston, so that's not that big of a deal. But do keep the football players in your prayers. Those be driving them, and I know there'll be some people going. I really would, if someone's going, and having to drive by themselves or main driver, I'd probably recommend you spend the night somewhere, because that is going to be a long way back. And I've been on that road many a time, even been on that road that late at night. It's no fun. So at least my guess is they'll rotate drivers for the football team. I think they have to by CDL license rule. I think by law they have to, because it's going to be too much of a span, a certain period of time without enough break. So they'll probably have to rotate drivers. Yes. Huh? Yes. So that by the time the game, they're going to wind up, so they're going to have to have it. But most of the coaches can drive, so that's not really the big issue. The issue is other people that don't have that number of drivers, and I think that was the big thing with the cheerleader situation was, that's a lot to do, and so it will be a different game. I just pray, people are safe going and coming back, and the players are safe. And hopefully the rain's not too bad if it's just raining, but the lightning stuff, it really, it's already a long ways off. You don't want major delays when, with everything going the right schedule, you get back at 3 a.m. You don't want something where it's much like, come on in. Are y'all by yourself? Your mom with you? She. Lost my crowd. Yes, and of course there'll be 2. I assume they're going to probably swap out driving, and so, but that's a long ways to go. So hopefully it'll all be, it's just an interesting thing. The game really is meaningless as far as win or loss. So really the big thing is everybody's healthy, no one gets hurt. But anyway, there's other people that are, hopefully we trust, are making decisions that are wise for the football team, made those choices, and so we'll leave it at that. We'll just hope that everything is safe. Give an update on Monica. She has developed some, I guess, lesions or cysts in the neck and kind of head area. They are outside the skull, so they're nothing of alarm as far as long-term problems, but they are painful, and my guess is likely they'll have to remove them. And so, who knows? It could be a side effect from everything that she's having undergoing, or they could have been there and just made grow faster since all the radiation or chemo or something. But anyway, so continue to keep her in your prayers. He didn't ever say about Chad, did he? Chad Asher's. Okay, so last we have Chad was in the hospital with COVID. Asher, Jessica's brother-in-law, but don't know if that's still the case or not. I'm sure he's still. Anyone heard from Sandy? Okay, go ahead. Okay, in the hospital. Typically, they won't discharge her like that. Either way, they may take her to some type of other facility, but they won't let her go home like that. Yes. Yeah, well, now y'all went and saw her Sunday, did you not? Yeah. I don't really have any updates on anyone else that's on the prayer list. Anybody have any other updates than what we've had? Well, things continue to keep on going. In Arkansas, our numbers are a little bit better, and that's good. It's interesting. As smart as a lot of these people are, there's obviously something that's being missed. I would always urge anyone, if the doctors say, let's see, Sean. Okay, I'll give an update on Sean since he texted. I asked him how his physical therapy going. He said he went Monday, and they believe I need it 2 times a week for 6 weeks, then go up from there. I go again tomorrow too. My muscles in my legs are weak and very stiff, so therapy is what he needs. So anyway, so that's good though. He in general looking better every time I see him, and so he'll gradually get some strength back. And it's still too early to know what kind of long term or how long he'll be in this. And like I said, a lot of these things, we don't know. Sometimes we are so overconfident that we know so much, and it'll fit to some of our reading that we had last week. But that we have the answers, and even people that are brilliant minds and do different things. And like I say, I would encourage, and unless your doctor says it's not a good idea, I'd encourage you to get your vaccine. The boosters, well, that's kind of a debated topic right now, but it seems if you're over 65, you probably should get a booster. Although that's just for the Pfizer right now. They haven't said anything Moderna, and the numbers that I've seen as far as the studies, Moderna actually has held up better than Pfizer on the Delta variant. But my point though is a lot of things don't still make rhyme or reason. Now, I do believe our overall numbers are not as bad as they were, say, last January because of vaccines. But you see full stadiums, such as and you see all this, and the high school stadiums are full and everything, and yet since school's been back, the numbers have went down. Now, there's a lot of things going on in there, and I do think there is an aspect that doesn't get talked about a lot, is taking care of yourself. And that's something that I do think that's with any kind of sickness or illness. Most people get sick when they're run down, not had good sleep, tired, things like that. And so, to me, it needs to be promoted more, the lifestyle you're living. The more active you are, the more outside you are, the more all these things added together probably will help you, because those are things that, your mental well-being is important. And I really think one of the worst things that got out that was just simply not proven to be true, I want to tell you, coming to church, being around people, that does so much for your mental well-being that really does a lot for your health as well. And so, your mental well-being and your physical well-being are connected. And like I say, a lot of people don't really understand exactly how that works, but it does. And so the better you feel about things, generally, the less apt you're going to be to get sick. So the main point, though, that I wanted to make in that is the more we think we know, a lot of times, the less we know. And that's just, that is life. And I think it's the hubris of mankind. Our reading this week, Wednesday, September 29th is today, but yet it's 39th week. We're going to be in the 40th week. So if I'm right, that's 12 weeks left. And anyway, we're in the captivity. We're now getting to the point where they're coming back. At least they're coming back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. So last Friday we had a section of reading Psalms 102, Ezra, Chronicles, and basically the synopsis says Psalms 102 is a poem from one in deep affliction. And of course, this is basically towards the end of the 70-year period, and it's been a long time. Very few people could remember and were alive when they had not been in captivity, when the temple was still in existence. So it was more of a thing that, a few would be alive, but most were not. It's kind of like, a lot of the wars that we think of so significant in American history that, very few people are left from the World War II generation. And that's even getting, even the Vietnam generation, you're starting to have people that are no longer with us from that era. And so it's something that, the stories that you used to could hear. One of the things, I don't know if my brother still has it or not, but I wish he did, and I wish I could borrow it sometime and copy it. My brother, one time when we was in Salisaw, junior high, he had actually he was in high school, but he had a assignment. I don't know if I think it was history, might have been civics, but it was an assignment. He had to report on the Depression and how it impacted people. And so one of the things he did was he interviewed. It happened to be one of the elders at the time at Salisaw. It was Charlie Slater and Avis, his wife, and they lived during that generation. And in fact, they were one of the charter members of the church there at Salisaw. Of course, Charlie being the younger brother of Will Slater. But so he did an interview on them, what it was like during the Depression. And of course, Oklahoma was rather, that was the heart of what was called the Dust Bowl and other things. And so it was interesting, not just reading something out of a history book, but having someone's first account of what life was actually like for them. And so we're losing that. So think about this. These Jews have been in captivity, and now even the ones that had a first-hand account of how marvelous Solomon's temple must have been, and how marvelous it must have been to have had the feast days and the sacrifices that they would do there, and yet very, very few people actually knew what that was like. And a lot of the ones that were even alive, they probably were so young that, what kind of memory as far as details may they have had. We're going to spend some time on this one. Daniel 6 is Daniel in the lion's den. Now, I like this because Daniel shows, and by the way, Daniel's one of my favorite individuals of the Bible, Scripture, because you will be hard-pressed to find Daniel doing something you say, well, you shouldn't have done that. Or you showed a lack of faith in what you did. You really would be hard-pressed. And And we're not talking about just a short period of time. Some characters or individuals of the Bible, people of the Bible, what they're depicted in the Scripture is a very small glimpse of their life. But Daniel, we're going to get a little bit more. Now, Daniel 6 occurs roughly almost at the end of the 70 years. Okay? So it's almost maybe about 68 years into the captivity. Daniel was a teenager. He was anywhere between probably 13 to 18 years old. Exactly what age, we don't know, but he was somewhere in that category. That was the age of the people that they did. Because what Nebuchadnezzar did, he had this education system that was a 3-year advanced program, much like our modern colleges. And so Daniel was somewhere in that age demographic. He was made a eunuch. He was taken from his land. So, what, 68 plus, say, 15? Maybe good at math. That's 83. Anybody got Daniel beat? Now, he could have been up to 85, 86, 87, but anybody have Daniel beat in the audience today? Well, you don't have to say it. But some of y'all are close to that age demographic, are you not? You're close. So, Daniel was 83. Now, when we read about that he refused the king's food and he would not eat of this unclean food or drink the wine, he was a teenager and he stood firm. And how admirable that someone of young could have such strong faith, especially when everything was taken away from him and everything that he would have had for his future. Now recall, Daniel would have been from the tribe of Judah. He was from a prestigious family. A family of royalty. Now, he likely wasn't directly in line to ascend to a throne, but he was someone of prominence. He would have received the best of the best. He would have had money. He would have been someone of prestige. He would have probably been betrothed to the best of the best as far as the ladies in the area. Yet all that was thrown away. And when they made him a eunuch, it even meant that even if they returned to the temple, which they had been promised that 70 years, but it meant it didn't matter for Daniel because he wouldn't be allowed on the temple grounds. And yet Daniel stayed firm in his faith. And we see this and we see these other things, but Daniel 6 he's 83 years old or 85, somewhere, in the mid-80s. Now, that was old back in that day. And he was advanced. He wasn't of as much prominence, although he did, at the end of, we know that before Babylon was taken over by the Medo-Persians, he had been restored because he told what the handwriting on the wall was, and then the kingdom collapsed. But he's now going to be back in prominence as an old man. No longer a young man. He is an old wise man. And let's see how it works. Well, in Daniel 6, verses 1 through 8 says, "It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was one, to whom these satraps should give account." Now, don't know exactly, but likelihood, the 3 major kingdoms that the Medo-Persians took over. They took over Libya, they took over Babylon, and they took over Syria, I believe it was. But anyway, those general areas, they had taken over, and likely they had one person that was over those each regions. But they had little small, you might call them governors or something that was underneath them that handled the majority of things. But these presidents are these, that they would do more. And so then Daniel became distinguished above all the other presidents and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him. And the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. So he'd divided up 3, but Daniel was doing such a great job, he was going to make Daniel over all of it. Then the presidents and the satraps sought to find a ground for complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom, But they could not find no ground for complaint or any fault, because he was faithful, and no error or fault was found in him. Now, why do you think they was wanting to find fault in Daniel? Now, we've seen this before. Remember, the whole thing with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was, what was that really a result of? Yeah, but remember, people set them up so that they could be, punished for not really doing anything wrong, but yet they set them up. Why did the people not like them? Even though they did such a great job, all of them had done such a great job. Daniel here is doing a really great job. Why would they not like him? Jealousy. Okay. Yes. And here's the thing. And before it was most likely people that were Chaldean. And these people from these exiles from Judea was, wait a second, they're being elevated above us. And here Daniel, Daniel's old. They probably weren't quite his age. Also, here we see, once again, he's from this exiled country from a long time ago. And why is he given all this prominence? And my guess is some of these were Medes or Persians. And so they wanted to find a reason for him not to be quite that good, but they couldn't find anything. Then these men said, we shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. So there we go. We can't find anything that he really does bad, but he puts his God first. Now, how would they know that? I watched. It was obviously obvious. It wasn't a thing where you had to doubt, what kind of a man is Daniel? To me, one of the saddest commentaries you could ever have if you work out somewhere, or you're known in the community, and the saddest commentary that could be is, and I've heard this from some people, they'll say, well, I go to church. You mean you're a Christian? Now, I want to tell you, that's probably the saddest commentary you could ever have about yourself. That people would not know what kind of person you are. Perhaps it's, the way you talk. Maybe it's the way you act, the things you do. But that, to me, is the saddest commentary. And it should be quite the opposite. And I think we've all been around people. Now, whether or not they are New Testament Christians, as we understand, you can tell someone who is respectful of God's ways, that believes that you should live by what God's Word says. And it's obvious when someone's like that. They are kinder to people. They are more courteous. They do that extra mile, whether it be at work, whether it be out in the, wherever. They're the type of people you want to be with. And it is interesting. A lot of people that I've come across throughout the years, different times, you'll be different places, you'll see somebody, and you'll come find out, they are they go to the ex-Church of Christ too. And it's like, oh, well, that's the way it should be. But then you come across some people it's not. And so, we should be like Daniel. It should be obvious. People shouldn't have to say, are you a Christian? It should be obvious by the things that we do and the things we say and how we act. Then these presidents and satraps came by agreement to the king and said to him, O King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the counselors and the governors are agreed that the kingdom should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction, that whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, was that true? No. I mean, my guess is they left out several people, but they left out Daniel for sure, did they not? So they tell the king a lie. And so what happens to these individuals, I want to tell you, it kind of was what they did to themselves. Because it wasn't truthful what they say to the king. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. Now, I want to tell you what the Medo-Persian Empire was known above all things was. It was a kingdom of law and order. And, even you think about Esther. You remember why it was so dangerous for her to go to the king without being asked? Because the law. They really strictly looked at the law of the land. And so there was no exceptions. When the law was passed, that's the way it was. And so anyway, and they know what they're doing, So therefore King Darius signed the document and injunction. Sounds good to me. Got to come to me. Everybody agrees to it. No brainer. So he signs it. When Daniel knew that the document had to be signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he had done previously. So Daniel knew about this. Why didn't Daniel just close the doors, go maybe to a closet, and pray in secret? Okay? But why do you think Daniel didn't do that? Would it have been wrong for Daniel to have done that? Yes. I think there's a difference. We need to understand there would be a difference because New Testament Christians, they did a lot of, they worshiped in places where it wasn't public. But that was different when you know the rules up front. In other words, this was something that was passed after the fact. So what would it have looked like to others if all of a sudden they didn't see Daniel pray? They was afraid. What else? That he revered the king more than he revered God. I mean, and that could be taken from that. The king made this decree. I'm going to go by what the king says. Well, who should we put first, even if it's not the best for us? So in this case, Daniel would have been wrong because, all eyes were looking to Daniel. What's he going to do? He did the same he always did. There was nothing wrong with it before. There's nothing wrong with it now. And so anyway, so it goes on. He says, then these men came by agreement, found Daniel making petition and plead before his God. Then they came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who makes petition to any god or man within 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast in the den of lions? The king answered and said, the thing stands fast according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked. Then they answered and said before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or the injunction you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was much distressed, and set his mind to deliver Daniel. I think he realized that, I've been set up on this. Daniel was someone that had done such a wonderful job. He was indeed a wise man that was a great leader. So he labored till the sun went down to rescue him. Then these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, Know, O king, that it is a law of the Medes and Persians that no injunction or ordinance that the king established can be changed. Why would this bother the king? He did like Daniel, but why would them reiterating to him that no injunction or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed? Why would that enter into the king? He's the king. Couldn't he just change his mind? Okay. Now, this is where knowing a little bit about the government of the Medo-Persians helps out. Darius likely wasn't actually the emperor over all of Medo-Persia. That probably was still maybe even Cyrus at this time. So what was Darius? Well, he was a king, but over it. Much like, there's a difference between, say, an emperor and a king. Think about King Herod in New Testament times. He had to answer to the emperor of Rome, did he not? In the same way, Darius, although was very, very high up and can set rules and laws and everything, he also would have to answer to someone. So the fact that these people called him out on this would have been possibly bad news to him if he all of a sudden was caught not abiding by the laws. So then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought cast into the den of lions. Now, by the way, there are still lions in Iran. Did anyone know that? Some of this seems odd to us, but there are still lions in Iran. You go to Iran, there are some lions out there. I've been to Iran personally, so I do know people that have. In fact, one of my brother's best friends when we lived in South Oklahoma, his dad is before the fall of Shah. He used to work in Iran on some of the gas lines, and while he's there, he actually transported a baby lion, male lion, back home. Not a good idea. So anyway, he built this 8-foot fence around his house, and they eventually had to, you hear about these, these animal, what do they call them? Where they rescue places or zoos. I forget which one it was eventually, because the lion, when it got to adolescence, it could easily jump that 8-foot fence. And so, needless to say, the neighbors didn't like it too much when they saw a, pretty much fully grown lion, roaming around where they have their cows and horses and other things. So, needless to say, he wanted, but anyway, they do have lions. They look different than the African lions. If I should have brought a picture, but they're generally not as broad and thick. They're generally leaner, and so they do look different. They don't look. In fact, most of the times, if you see something on a picture, they'll generally show the African because it looks more what we think of as a lion, but yet, they just look a little leaner, a little different. But these lions then, for, Babylon, they would use a fiery furnace to execute people. The Medo-Persians, they like using lions' dens. And so it'd be this little pit, and they'd throw you in there. And by the way, guess what these lions ate? Huh? Yeah, they ate the people that they threw in there. So they wouldn't feed them otherwise. So what would that tend to make them? Very hungry. And plus, when they threw something in there, that was food. So needless to say, usually you didn't last very long once you got thrown in there. And it was more than one lion. It was several of them, and they can be rather vicious. So they threw them in the lion's den. A stone was brought and laid at the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and the signet of the Lord's, that nothing could be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him. Then at break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. As he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? I want to tell you, how much was Daniel prominent in who he served? Well, even the king knew who this was. Then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth. They have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him. And also before you, O king, I have done no harm. Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him, because he had trusted in God. And the king commanded that those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions, they, their children, and their wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion, people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven, and on earth he has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius, and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Darius was Mede, Cyrus Persian. Cyrus was the actual emperor. Darius was over this area of Babylon, and he was king. But we see here that Daniel made such an impact. Daniel changed Nebuchadnezzar's heart and mind, did he not? Here we see Darius the same, and Cyrus. Wait till you hear it. It was in this reading. We won't have time to go through it, but it was in this reading, and we see that Cyrus also makes a very similar statement about God himself. What influence Daniel had? He's in his mid-80s. Now, it'd been easy for Daniel to have said, I don't want any more part of this. I'm done. And how sad it is that we tend to, people when they're young, we're like, you don't need to try that. You're just not ready yet to do that. Or someone as they get older, it's time for someone else. Or sometimes we do it to ourselves. When we're young, we're saying, well, there's not much I can do. Or we get to a certain age and like, well, I'll let someone younger do that now. And things haven't changed. Some of the greatest examples and some of the greatest things you can do is not by how physical you are anymore, but it's by how much faith you have. And how much faith you have isn't really always dictated by age, is it? We know some young people that have great faith, and older people have great faith too. They may have maturity, so they've got some advantages that the young may not. May not have the stamina and the energy, but they have a mature faith. Daniel was Daniel till probably the day he died. And what influence he had. Now, we don't get to probably have influence with kings or presidents, but you've got influence with your neighbors. You've got influence with where you work. You've got influence with people you come in contact. If you go to ball games, if you go to schools, if you go to X, Y, whatever it is, you can have the same type of influence. Well, let's just quickly go and show you some of the other things. Ezra, Nehemiah, readings give a list of people who returned. And listen to that one, please, because I want to tell you. Let's see, 273 days, I think I read. Some of the most difficult things to pronounce in all the Bible, I want to tell you without question, was in this reading right here. So just listen to it. Hopefully I didn't butcher them too bad, but it took me some takes. Usually I can get it in one take, sometimes two takes. Some of these it took me a while because it was name after name after name. And so anyway, just listen to it just because I worked hard on that one. Haley likes the outtake. I need to record the outtakes because Haley gets a kick out of when I don't pronounce it correct. So some of you that think I always get them right and whatever, not that night. But those names are tough. I'm just going to say those are very tough names. Ezra and Psalms. And then we're going to do this next week because we get into Haggai, we get into Zechariah. One of the things that I want to do this next week, we'll catch up later because some of these aren't as eventful. But I want to read this, and this will be what we'll close with. Haggai 1 through 10, and verse 5. It says, "Now therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. You have sown much and harvested little. You eat, but you never have enough. You drink, but you never have your fill. You clothe yourself, but no one is warm. And he who earns wages does so to put them into a bag with holes. Thus says the Lord of hosts, consider your ways." I love this passage because, once again, this is the time when they're about to go and be given the approval. They give the approval to go rebuild the temple. And people are like, how bad things are. And I love this. Consider your ways. You sow much and you harvest little. Now this is a little different than, you reap what you sow. They're sowing a lot, but yet they never have anything. They drink, but they never have enough. They clothe themselves, but no one's warm. The wages they earn, it's like got holes in the pocket, so it never stays around. How would we compare that to people today? Because I think this fits our times perfectly. How many people do you know that have had a perfectly good running car, and yet they say, I've got to get that new car? Or, they got a closet full of clothes, but like, I got nothing to wear. I got to go find something to wear. It goes on and on. They make decent money, but they want more. And so they do this, do that. They may work extra hours or whatever, and yet they're never around their family, or whatever it may be. You see that these attitudes haven't changed, have they? People want more, and they want more, and whatever it is, they can never get enough. They never are satisfied. Paul said, whatever state he is, he learned to be content. And you see it in some people, and those people, I tell you, they're usually the people that's the most at peace, the most at ease, and nothing seems to face them. Because they've learned this. They've mastered this process of trusting in God, and they're content no matter what happens. But people in life, and I would hope it really applies more to those who are not Christians. You see those in the world, they are always wanting, and they're never satisfied. It's never enough. And it always goes that way. They'll go from job to job. And that's why a lot of people will, a job will pay them 10 cents an hour more. They're like, I'm going to that job. They go to this job. And it's like, or I'm going to do this, and on the cycle goes. Never satisfied. And so I just found that, I'm not going to take time to read a lot of Haggai, but I just really found that really didn't just speak to them of that day. They were complaining about how bad things were. And yet here, consider your ways. Maybe you don't have because it's about you. And you've not submitted to God the way you should. So, are they going to come back, or do you know? Anybody know? Why don't you ring the bell? Maybe they'll. I hear movement. We weren't too loud for you, were we? We got a little excited. Okay. We tried to keep it down, but we got a little excited. Okay, Rick, you got a song picked out? 678. I just read from Haggai chapter 1 and Haggai 1:5 where it says, consider your ways, and you have sown much, you have harvested little, you eat, but you never have enough, you drink, you never have your fill, you clothe yourself, but no one is warm, and one who earns wages does so, he puts them in a bag with holes. Thus says the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. And I don't know what a better way to provide some thought-provoking moments for us, and that we should always be considering our ways. Why are we not satisfied? And Paul said that he learned to be content in whatever state he was. And you have to understand that Paul during this time had been in prison most of that time period. And I don't care what kind of, you could say maybe he's under house arrest or some of that, but when you're incarcerated, that's never fun. Paul was beaten many times. Paul was shipwrecked many times. Paul was even stoned once. All these things. Paul said, I learned to be content. In fact, in Philippians, as we're studying on Sunday evenings, he would say things like rejoice. And again, I say rejoice. Yet a lot of times, we can have a hangnail. We're like, oh, how bad I have it. My day's horrible. And we can worry about things. And, why isn't God better to us? God is saying, consider your ways. If you're not a Christian tonight, I want to tell you, you truly need to consider your ways, because things in this life are going to be temporary. One day, this will be over. We'll have to answer to God. So if you're not a Christian, we'd urge you to become one tonight, or maybe if you've done things that you shouldn't, consider your ways. So if there's anything you need to do, come now, together we stand and sing. Would I know more of His grace to others show, more of His saving fullness see, more of His love who died for me, more about Jesus, more about Jesus.